I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, Ottawa remains under a state of emergency, the mayor labeling the ongoing protest a form of psychological warfare.
What was initially described as a peaceful protest is now turned into a siege of our downtown area.
We are stretched to the limit, but we are 100% committed to using everything we have to end this demonstration.
Ottawa police say they are turning up the heat on the protesters, but the chief says they'll need more resources to reclaim control. Plus, Toronto streets reopen after weekend protests. Are more demonstrations in the works? And
extremely proud of myself on that, and to take gold with that run means so much for me.
Canada scores its first gold medal at the Beijing Olympics. They've endured non-stop blaring of horns for over a week. Now, downtown Ottawa residents might be getting some relief. A judge granting an injunction to stop protesting truckers from blasting their horns. The city's police chief says that while stepped-up enforcement has cut into the size of the protest, more resources are needed. Travis Danraj has the latest tonight from Ottawa.
Fueling up, hunkering down. The scene in Ottawa as police say they're cracking down on protesters who aren't budging.
If there's a gun pointed at me, I might move.
Last night, a camp was raided, thousands of liters of propane and fuel seized. 7 people were arrested Sunday, but supply is still coming in, and pressure is building for the chief to do more.
The Ottawa Police Service have been able to quell the large demonstration that came in. As it's turned into an occupation, we've been able to pivot and get the resources to go on offense to remove that occupation while still managing the elements of the demonstration. We are making significant progress since we've made that pivot.
Even though multiple law enforcement agencies have been called in, streets flooded with officers, the chief says he still needs more resources.
And we need more levels of government to play their role in the overall sustainable end to this demonstration.
Today, the mayor sent letters to Premier Ford and the Prime Minister. The ask, 1,800 more officers.
And we cannot allow an angry crowd to reverse a course that continues to save lives in this last stretch.
At a press conference, ministers were out in force condemning the protests, offering the city support. Inside the House, the opposition set their sights on Justin Trudeau.
When will the Prime Minister stop hiding, show up for Canadians, show some leadership, and fix the mess that he's created?
I think that what we have to ask at this moment in time is what needs to get done to get Canadians safe and out of this pandemic. And what we know is the best way we can get out of this pandemic is to get vaccinated.
As the government doubles down on vaccines and mandates and protesters stay put, Canada's capital remains in a state of emergency with no end in sight. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Ottawa.
Protests against the pandemic public health measures in Toronto over the weekend were noisy, but for the most part peaceful, with police reporting just 2 arrests. Chris Glover is looking into the impact of the demonstrations and the possibility they will continue.
A heavier than normal police presence in Toronto's downtown, but all police barricades and protesters from this weekend had been fully cleared by this morning. Those blockades were set up to bar trucks and other large vehicles from getting to Queen's Park and Hospital Row in a highly anticipated protest against COVID public health measures, including lockdowns. But people and noise inundated Toronto's core, especially through Saturday, shutting down the very businesses many protesters said should have stayed open through the pandemic.
We want this situation to be over as much as anyone else. We want to get back to business. We need to get back to business. These restaurants need your support, and this is the wrong kind of support.
The upscale vibe at Ration Beverly Restaurant on Queen Street was completely shattered, and they were forced to close even takeout on this first reopening weekend since the Ford government closed indoor dining at the beginning of January.
The last 5 weeks we've been counting down until we could open, and I think this protest is just one more additional hurdle that we've got to now cross over.
And it likely will continue to be his problem. There's been plenty of chatter on social media of these protests continuing in the days and weeks ahead.
I think that they very smartly and effectively created a no-go zone for large vehicles, oversized trucks in the downtown core.
City Councillor for Toronto's downtown, Kristen Wong-Tam, said the early blockades barring trucks from gathering in one place made Toronto's disruption so short-lived. But she thinks the road closures may have lasted too long through Sunday.
Police did not give me any intelligence on why we needed to keep it closed for the Sunday when we didn't necessarily hear that the protesters were coming back.
Wong Tam says in future weekends, we need a more nimble and better communicated police response. And she says officials cannot shy away from calling out domestic terrorism, especially if extreme hate groups turn out.
I would certainly be advocating for much harsher responses, because we could not let anybody occupy our city like that.
Going too soft, she says, and Ontario's capital runs the risk of getting shut down like the country's capital. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Long-term care homes across the province are easing restrictions today. The number of designated caregivers is increasing to 4 for each resident. And residents who've had at least 3 vaccine doses are now allowed to go on special social day trips.
Seeing these restrictions is going to allow residents to make sure that their social well-being is being met, and their care needs can be better attended to now that staffing issues and outbreaks are starting to stabilize once again.
Homes had been under strict rules for more than a month in an effort to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Dr. Sinha adds, despite a record number of cases among staff and residents in long-term care, vaccines have greatly reduced the number of deaths during this wave. Despite the easing of restrictions, though, approximately half of long-term care homes in the province are still dealing with COVID outbreaks.
So I'm very, very pleased to announce that today that we are adding 128 new long-term care beds right here in Mississauga.
That's Long-Term Care Minister Paul Calandra. He was in Mississauga today to announce the addition of more than 100 new long-term care beds. They will be part of a new care home being built in Mississauga that will offer culturally appropriate services for the Coptic Christian community. The union representing registered practical nurses in Ontario sat down with the province's Minister of Health today, saying staffing is hitting crisis levels. The meeting comes just a few days after the province sat down with registered nurses. And Farah Morelli tells us the government once again doesn't appear to be budging on calls to repeal Bill 124.
In Ontario, life is starting to move closer to normal. But inside hospitals, still anything but normal.
Morale is really at an all-time low.
Alison Lewis is a registered practical nurse at a hospital in Fergus. She says staff shortages and a higher influx of patients persist, and it's taking a toll.
It's very hard. Your workload's very heavy. They're 12-hour shifts. Most of the time, people aren't getting their breaks, and especially on time by any means or stretch of the imagination. They're lucky to see one lunch break.
Registered practical nurses, or RPNs, say they've stepped up during the pandemic, often doing the work of more trained and better paid registered nurses. But they say pay and working conditions are prompting many to leave.
You've seen a lot of people leave. The senior people that were kind of on the cusp of, I'm thinking about going. This COVID has been the push to get them out. A lot of younger ones coming in, you see them, they're already struggling.
The Registered Practical Nurses Association of Ontario is making a set of recommendations to the province to better retain and recruit RPNs. They center around 3 issues: better pay, like extending the pandemic pay to RPNs retroactively; workload standards, like legislating staffing and creating more full-time work; and improving education, such as streamlining the process to go from an RPN to an RN.
So we wanted to talk about these issues.
The big ask in today's meeting for the government to repeal Bill 124. It limits annual salary increases for nurses.
The minister was very clear with us that they are not considering removing or repealing Bill 124, and we certainly in its entirety anyway, but that won't stop us.
The union is now pushing for this to become an election issue.
You have to give them that incentive to want to stay. You have to treat them with the respect that they deserve.
For RPNs like Lewis, the hope is for recognition of the sacrifices they've made and will continue to make in the months ahead. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
After those frigid temps we've been experiencing, nice to get around 0 today, Colette.
Yeah, we did pretty good. And in fact, there was a portion of the day into the afternoon where we even got above. So yeah, Yeah, temperatures above seasonal, and it came earlier at least with some sunshine, so that was also pretty pleasant as well until those clouds really thickened up. And that's just kind of a bit of a disturbance that's moving through. Will give some intermittent flurries, not much to it, but tonight into these evening hours and a little bit of a chance. Now for the GTA, mostly it's just going to be the cloud cover that we have on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to see some mild temperatures above freezing again. However, slightly more organized system moves through, and because of that, a little bit of wet flurry or mixed precipitation coming in with some rain showers because of those milder temperatures. And then we've got cold air that will return. And I figured you knew that would happen. It is February, but not until we get towards the weekend, probably kind of second half of the day, Saturday, and then plunging into Sunday. So daytime highs today, yeah, look at that. In fact, some readings at 2 degrees and St. Catharines up to 3. It was actually cooler back into southwestern Ontario where Windsor only made it to 0. These are our current temperatures that we're looking at now. Now, there's a bit of a wind chill in there, but winds aren't very strong. And in fact, we'll see them getting lighter through the overnight hours. And then tomorrow they'll kick around to the west and pick up a little bit into the afternoon hours. But there's that cloud deck that moved in after some of that sunshine we were experiencing. Off to the west and north of us, some of the light flurry activity as this first disturbance moves through. This one here along the eastern seaboard, that's going to be more significant, but it's not going to back up and affect us here at the Great Lakes. But for our neighbors into Atlantic Canada, they'll be dealing with that storm. We'll turn our attention to what happens as we go Tuesday night into Wednesday, and that's that slightly more organized system that comes through. As it does, we get into a little bit of a mix that's coming through and some accumulations, but more so towards Lake Huron, around Georgian Bay into northern Ontario, where we'll see something a little more significant. But otherwise, we're just talking about this kind of moving through, milder on Wednesday, but not enough really to take care of some of the snow deck that we still have. Tonight, look at some of those readings then with the overnight temperatures. They're close to seasonal, slightly milder. And then tomorrow, seasonal norms for our daytime highs that we're looking at. Some sunshine probably earlier, maybe a few breaks still in the afternoon, but mostly the clouds move in with that slight chance of flurries. Wednesday, a little bit wet on the roads. It'll still slow things down a bit. And then I mentioned the colder air coming in. So Saturday, we'll probably see that milder air earlier in the day and then that temperature falling off there, Dwight. We don't need to worry about that yet. It's a few days away. Let's just worry about the milder stuff right now.
Yeah, let's enjoy that for now. A housing project that Toronto described as urgent is in limbo nearly a year after Council asked Premier Ford's government to fast-track its approval. With cold temperatures, advocates for people experiencing homelessness say the city can't afford to have these homes vacant. Kirthana Sasatharan has more.
In a TTC parking lot near Willowdale and Yonge Street sits 59 modular homes waiting to be used. The homes were supposed to be installed just up the street at 175 Cummer by the end of last year, but instead the project has been held up.
We are calling on Doug Ford to fast track and say yes to the City of Toronto's request to put people in these homes so they can rebuild their lives.
But the movement of these homes are at a standstill, waiting for a ministerial zoning order to approve the construction of the 3-story modular building.
These homes have been sitting vacant and empty and abandoned for 7 months now.
The project, which began in June of last year, was implemented through the City of Toronto and the federal government's housing initiative to provide housing for people experiencing homelessness in the area. Last March, Willowdale MPP Stan Cho penned a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, asking him to reconsider the speedy approval of the project. And more recently, another letter to Councillor Anna Bailau, chair of the city's Planning and Housing Committee, citing the location chosen was not very accessible to resources for those that need it the most. But the project isn't the first of its kind. There are already other modular housing projects like this one at Dundas and Dovercourt. The city says they've always had the province's support.
They ensure that public consultation has been taken, which we've done in all projects. They've supported the MZOs that we had. We've been told some concerns about the location. The location is evaluated as others were.
In the middle of winter, advocates say there is no time to waste.
Shelters are stretched to their capacity, but shelters in and of themselves are not homes. This is a desperately needed and rare opportunity to create homes for people.
In a statement to CBC, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing spokesperson says the ministry was not satisfied with the consultations conducted by the city and further consultations needed to be done.
In this one, we've consulted further as requested by the province. and we still haven't been able to get the MZO. The need is great for housing and for supportive housing in particularly. So it is very upsetting that we have these units on a parking lot where they could be somebody's home.
The city says staff have regularly spoken to ministry staff about the status of the request and whether any additional information was required. Until an MZO permit is given, the units will continue to sit vacant and abandoned, fully wrapped and fenced in Willowdale. Kirtan Asasi there in CBC News, Toronto.
In-class learning is beginning today for some students at the University of Toronto. We spoke with some students who say they're excited to be back.
It's time to go back in person. As long as everyone's vaccinated, everyone's following protocol, I think it should be normal.
In person is much better. The amount of work I put in is like nothing compared to when I'm at school. Like I feel like just being on campus helps me work.
I miss a lot of my friends, so it'll be fun.
Kind of excited because it's kind of hard studying at home.
How has it been at home?
It's been a lot of procrastinating.
U of T issued a statement saying specific plans for the return to in-person learning will vary. It depends on the needs of campuses and departments. More classes are also resuming at York University today, including at Osgoode Hall Law School. Meanwhile, Humber College plans to make a full return to in-person learning after spring break on March 7th, but thousands of students have signed a petition to keep the remainder of the winter semester online.
Before we had a commitment that like a semester would either be all online or all in person, and now we have this sort of like on and off again situation that becomes really difficult. Once the college starts demanding people to return in person, it creates a lot of issues for a lot of people.
Humber College says it believes the best learning experience for students is on campus, but some think to return for just 7 weeks is unnecessary and disruptive. Some scary moments for a dog caught on thin ice near Denver, Colorado recently. The pooch was doing what dogs do, chasing birds, when he fell through and became trapped in the freezing water, unable to get out. A local fire crew responded to a panicked 911 call from the pup's owner. A firefighter managed to hoist the dog out of the icy pond, while others on shore coaxed him, little shake of the water there, to safety. And you needn't worry, Colette, you know we would have showed it if it wasn't a happy ending.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, that's awesome. What a nice rescue there. Sure, those folks very happy, and that pup very happy to be reunited too. Let's show you what's happening here on our radar imagery for this evening. You can see this batch of flurry activity that's just to the west of us, and that's kind of tracking inwards. So it's not going to be that significant. A little bit of, intermittent flurries that may at times just make the roadways a little bit slick. So something to be kind of mindful of this evening. Tomorrow into the GTA, there's a chance for some flurries again, but there shouldn't be too much to it. Wednesday, the system that moves in is just a little bit more organized coming our way. Tonight, -6 with those winds becoming lighter, so not much of a wind chill then to factor in. Tomorrow afternoon, -2. The winds will pick up into the afternoon hours, and that slight chance of getting a little bit of wetness on the roadways. A much better chance of it, though, into Wednesday, kind of a mix, though, because those temperatures above freezing that we will be seeing, Dwight, and we stay pretty mild through the week till we get to about halfway through the weekend.
We're going to enjoy it while it lasts. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night. Coverage from the Beijing Olympics is next.